as Christopher Nolan is considered by many cinephiles to be the best director working today, A24 has built up quite the reputation for themselves. I often see on social media people saying they'll watch anything that A24 puts out. They have a smaller fan base, that's for sure. When you look at the box office, they're not bringing in Nolan numbers over there, although they are whooping his butt in the Oscar area. So that's funny. If only Christopher Nolan would make an A24 movie, all the cinephiles would rejoice. But A24's reputation is growing, so much so that Max just made a deal to exclusively stream their films after the theatrical and digital, aka like iTunes and stuff, window. That's really interesting. And some people were very excited about that. I was like, what's the big deal? Whatever, a couple of A24 films. And the A24 fans, though, were like, to Max! And so, though, I had that in mind when I sat down to watch The Iron Claw, and I was like, this is a good movie. Maybe A24 does have, I think A24, I see them becoming a little bit more commercial. Maybe they're like, man, our movies are already very critically acclaimed and we have our fans, but maybe we could make some movies that make some money. Although their movies are extremely cost effective. But this and the upcoming Civil War are the most commercial movies they've released to date. Maybe to some degree, Uncut Gems. I loved Uncut Gems. This isn't as good as Uncut Gems, but this is very good. Like other A24 films, the film is extremely well crafted, incredibly well acted, and it has a pop culture twist. I think that's partially what's won over fans for them. They really know how to connect with the social media crowd. And I think here, it's High School Musical Zac Efron in the lead. And of course, also their films are very, very dark. And this one is no exception. This is an extraordinarily sad movie. I was crying my eyes out by the end. But unlike, say, a Pixar movie, I feel The Iron Claw earns your tears through masterful storytelling and performances. Plus, this really happened. So the Von Erich family deserves your tears. It's incredible that this is a true story. It's amazing that this actually happened. Here are two things that caught me off guard about The Iron Claw that I didn't expect. One, while I knew the film was about wrestling, I didn't realize how in-depth it would be. And it was, with wrestling so popular today, I thought it was really neat to see the early days of wrestling and how much has changed and how much hasn't. I thought that was great. Wrestling is a tough gig because, like with actors, most wrestlers can barely make a living in the ring until they make it big. So they have to be there because they love it and because they have really big dreams. And that makes it all the more heartbreaking because so many never make it. Two, this is a really interesting look at being a man, at masculinity. I thought that was fascinating. What society expects of men and therefore what men expect of themselves and how that's changing. This movie takes place from the late 1970s through most of the 1980s. The journey of Efron's Kevin Von Erich, while obviously quite tragic, is also beautiful and quite moving to see his evolution, considering where he starts out to where he ends up. That was beautiful. The movie also explores men's relationships with each other, like their fathers and their brothers and other men, but particularly fathers and brothers in this movie. I loved how much the Von Erich brothers loved each other. And also how the women in their lives affect the course of their lives, from their mothers to their girlfriends. I thought that was really interesting to see it from the other side. As a woman, I'm always thinking of the female perspective, but it was really cool to see, how some guys view it. I thought that was really interesting. So in other words, this isn't just a wrestling movie. The movie is also about ambition and the importance of a good balance between your work life and your personal life. So important, and this movie does a great job underscoring that. Also fame, and more importantly, the things people don't often talk about when it comes to fame, like how fleeting it is. And this, to me, I think is very interesting. And I've seen, I've talked to people about this. It's how when even you do have it, it ebbs and flows. It's not a constant high. And I think the lows can be very low. Like there's one scene in the movie where one of the characters is talking about how hard it is to come off the high of a win. And I thought that was really great because nobody talks about that. Everyone just thinks about how great it would be to be a winner. And you're like, but what about between the wins? I think, the public has a very short memory. And I think it's fascinating the way it's portrayed here. So who is this Sean Durkin, the writer-director of The Iron Claw? Well, he made Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene. I remember that movie. It put Elizabeth Olsen on the map back in the day, a decade ago. But I didn't remember Sean Durkin. He made The Nest in 2020, which was largely overlooked, and here he is again now, although he also directed several episodes of the recent Dead Ringers remake, which really didn't land. It got a couple of nominations, but it didn't really connect. It was weird. I turned it off after about 10 minutes. And I believe that was one of the episodes that Durkin directed, but it wasn't because of his directing that I turned it off. It was just way too much for me. So he's understated, but he's good. But I think that maybe his understated qualities are what's kept the Iron Claw so far from really getting any awards nominations despite A24's best efforts. And they know how to get awards nominations and wins. They have 2 Best Pictures at least under their belt. But they just can't get the Iron Claw on the board in a real way, which I kind of understand having seen the movie. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end. But maybe I thought people aren't taking Zac Efron seriously enough in a dramatic role. Maybe that's it. And that's a shame. I mean, I can understand, it's his first big dramatic role. I mean, he's not going to just jump right to Oscar nominee. He did like that Nicole Kidman, Matthew McConaughey. Was that Matthew McConaughey in that movie? He did that movie a while ago, but that wasn't his movie. This is his movie. He's front and center. He's great. But he's working his way up. I mean, yeah, at first it's weird how much he looks like He-Man and like the action figure of He-Man. You're like, that is bizarre. His body is so muscularly distorted, it's distracting. Efron has never admitted to taking steroids or any kind of enhancements, but he has said that he took diuretics for Baywatch and that it took a significant mental toll on him that he's in fact still dealing with. So he's done some stuff, let's just say. Efron and Jeremy Allen White are the most bulked up, and when you see them, you worry if they're doing it in a healthy way. And part of you wonders if you can get your body to this level at a healthy way at all, if it's even possible to do it in a healthy manner. And I think that plays into the film, because as soon as you see these guys, you're worrying about them. You're like, are you okay? Are you taking care of yourself? It's okay, man. You don't have to be that big. I mean, they're huge, particularly Zac Efron. It's insane. But Efron isn't just delivering a physical performance here, even though he is very good in that regard. The wrestling scenes are extremely well done when they go well and when they don't go well. That was horrible. It's the acting, though, that I think really draws you in. I've always enjoyed Efron's work, and the evolution of his career has been really interesting to watch. From teen heartthrob to raunchy comedian to musicals, he held his own with Hugh Jackman. I love their number together. And now he's moving into dramas, and he's fantastic here. He effortlessly anchors the film, and he is asked to do a lot emotionally. Sometimes when an actor tries to transition into drama, they just don't have it. The film just feels not, as I said, anchored. But he does it. He's great. He depicts Kevin Von Erich's highs and lows perfectly, and he is a joy to watch throughout the film. His role also has a lot of nuance because Kevin Von Erich, despite his enormous physicality, is not a confident man, and that makes the performance all the more dynamic and interesting. But Efron has some great assists from the rest of the cast. I've been a fan of Harris Dickinson since Trust, and he's been slowly building a really amazing body of work. And here's another role to add to his resume. He's great here. And we all love Jeremy Allen White from The Bear, and his role here, though, was smaller than I expected. He didn't show up till at least a third into the movie. I was like, where's Jeremy Allen White? I was promised Jeremy Allen White. But when he does show up, he does a great job. He has some truly shocking moments in this movie. In fact, with one of them, an audience member at my screening actually gasped out loud. And it was shocking. You might know the general idea of what happened to the Von Erich family, but please resist the urge to go and look up the details. Wait until you see this movie so you can experience the story unfold as intended and be just as shocked as the Von Erich family was themselves as these things happened to them. Perhaps my second favorite performance in the movie, though, is from newcomer Stanley Simons. Who is this guy? Where'd he come from? He's done like hardly anything. He's amazing. Oh my gosh. He is asked to do some really heavy. At first I just thought he was, charismatic, but then he does some great acting. I was like, this guy's got it. And he pulls it all off effortlessly. I'm really impressed with Simons. If I were a casting director, I'd be showing him to every single director and producer I worked with. He's that good. Don't be surprised if his star rises relatively quickly. And if it doesn't, that just goes to show the injustice in Hollywood sometimes. He is incredible. I'm also a big fan of Lily James after the depth and compassion she brought to Pam and Tommy. And I always felt bad that Pamela Anderson didn't give her a chance because Lily James really did right by Pam Anderson, in my opinion. And this is another great role for her because I love this character. As Kevin Von Erich's father says, Kevin is very lucky that he met her. I think she plays a really a really, so often type A women can be portrayed in a negative light. So I love that Lily James was such a positive portrayal of a type A woman. I loved her. Speaking of the head of the Von Erich clan, I've also loved Holt McCallany ever since Mindhunter. No, why didn't we get more Mindhunter? It's because it was too expensive to make. But he's been getting a little bit of awards buzz for this movie. He and Zac Efron were the people who were like maybe going to get nominated. So I was excited to see his performance. But I think, now that I've seen it, I think he's only okay in the movie. I mean, don't get me wrong, he does a nice job, but the role isn't a particularly flashy one or one that has a lot of depth. He serves his purpose. And, if you like Holt McCallany, more Holt McCallany. In fact, to be honest with you, I don't know if I would have nominated The Iron Claw for any awards myself. I mean, I didn't get to see it before the first round of Critics' Choice voting, but I'm not like, darn it, I wish I had. I'm happy with the vote the way it is. I mean, it's a fantastic film, made for just $16 million. But I don't think it breaks through to the level of special. I mean, you should definitely see it, but I wouldn't rush to see it. Just make sure you see it at some point. It's a movie you don't have to see right now, but I wouldn't miss it. Also, shout out to Maura Tierney, who has a very interesting role as the mother of the Von Erich clan, who let's just say made some really unusual choices as a mom. But some mothers are like this, and so it's refreshing to see it portrayed in a movie. And I think Maura Tierney managed to do it in a very believable way. You were like, wow. But just to see the evolution of her character was really interesting. It was interesting. It speaks a lot, not only to, as I said, men, but, so men in Texas, they're a Texas family. Very interesting, really good. Also, a very good study, not only of like a character study, but societal. I think that was great. And I gotta give a shout out to Aaron Dean Eisenberg, who played Ric Flair. He was so good. This guy's got like 10 minutes of screen time, but he was so good. You were like, this guy's gotta already be famous. You were like looking under the wig. You were like, who is this? Do I know who this is? He's like someone who most people don't. I don't know who he is. He works. He's also a producer. But I mean, this guy, wow. I mean, talk about making the most of a small opportunity. He's got 10 minutes of screen time and he just lit the screen on fire. He was so good. I mean, it's a very funny role and Eisenberg gets it just right. So A24's reputation continues. Huzzah! With another, I mean, I'm even becoming a fan of theirs. With another fantastic entry. And as I said, this is a bit more commercial than some of their other movies, and Civil War as well, the upcoming Civil War. And with Zac Efron starring, I'll be interested to see if this becomes one of their higher box office films. They still haven't been able to crack the century mark yet, despite making films for so long. They still haven't been able to make $100 million. I don't think this will make $100 million either, but I do think it will do solid box office before doing extremely well on digital and streaming, because it is such a good movie. You don't need to see it in a movie theater, but as I said, you should see it at some point. It's really good. So if you don't go and see it in theaters, make sure you make a note of it so you catch it later on down the line on digital or no extra cost now on Max, thanks to that deal. I think this will do extremely well on Max. So that's my review of The Iron Claw, hitting theaters this Friday. I recommend you see it after Christmas or right before, but I think this is perfect for between Christmas and New Year's because, again, it's just so depressing. But for some of you, I know that's your jam, so enjoy. All right, so that's my review of The Iron Claw, as I said, hitting theaters this Friday. Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.